Hey everybody, and welcome back to the M&M podcast. I'm here with Mitch. Hey Mitch, how you doing?
I'm good, Alex. How are you?
Good, good. Today we have no guest star, unfortunately, but this gives us more time to geek out about Tarantino today. That's going to be our topic today. We're going to talk everything and anything Quentin Tarantino.
hmm
So Mitch, you said you know about Tarantino obviously, and you've seen his
Yeah, of
films, but
course.
you said you've seen a few new ones, like name some
Yeah,
of them, actually.
I definitely enjoy movies. I need to see a lot more. I'm not like a film expert like yourself, but I'd already seen two of them, so I watched a couple more in preparation. I enjoyed them, and I definitely look forward to discussing them. So I guess to start, we could just go through a little bit of Tarantino's background. He was born in Knoxville, Tennessee, which was referenced in Pulp Fiction. Butch's character, they kind of mentioned that as part of his backstory.
Mhm.
Um, he was raised by a single mom. His dad wasn't around. They moved to California when he was 4. Obviously, Tarantino loved movies as a kid, and a lot of his fondest memories, he says, came as a child. Were going to the theater with his mom and his grandmother. He had very little interest in school and actually dropped out of high school to get a job at a film theater. So obviously,
Mhm.
you could see he was on the path to, you know, becoming a great director.
Highly unemployable in
Yeah.
ninth grade. I think I
Got a
worked in
job at
a
a hamburger place, but you know where I eventually got a job at?
where?
Lying about my age because I was tall enough to get away with it. Was I at 16? No, I was officially 17 by this time. No, I was 16. 17 would have been almost good enough. I got a job at a porno movie theater.
Wow.
But he later got a job at Video Archives, which is a company in California, I guess, that
Mhm.
produces movies, and that's kind of where his writing career started, and then eventually directing and kind of just running the whole movie as he typically does.
And I didn't know about this until I was doing a little digging myself, but he wrote two screenplays before he started directing and didn't get made until after Reservoir Dogs, his debut film. But he
Mhm.
wrote Romance, True Romance, sorry, and Oliver Stone's Natural Born Killers, which came out in
Okay.
1993 and 1994, which is which is cool. That was his first screenplays he sold, but his first directorial debut was Reservoir Dogs, which is personally my favorite Tarantino movie. I know a lot
Yeah.
of people like they don't. I'm in the minority here for that, but
Mhm.
it's my personally my favorite.
Yeah. That was one of the ones I ended up watching because I wanted to have a little bit better of a background on his movies because I didn't know it was your favorite, but I knew it was one of your favorites, and
Mhm.
I kind of knew a little bit about it, and I thought, yeah, that sounds pretty interesting. So I guess yeah, that's a great place to start. We want to go through each movie one by one, just touch on it a bit. Some of them I haven't seen, but you certainly have. So I guess we'll go in order. And Tarantino's first, written and directed movie was Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah, and I found it's I'm glad you mentioned the like the theater and the video store that he loves because he was so influenced by like old cinema, like classic cinema. Uh, you see that in actually I found out he was influenced by the 1980 horror movie The Thing
Hmm.
before Reservoir Dogs because that movie was an isolated location and you have people who are mistrusting one another, trying to find that alien culprit or invader, right? And so in
Mhm.
this film, it's similar where there's just a group of people who are mistrusting each other in an isolated location, um, who yeah are at each other's throats the whole film. And I just found that very cool with the name too, the origin Reservoir Dogs, because he said when he was selling his scripts before he made the movie, he went into a producer's office and there was a box of uh, unsolicited manuscripts called
Mhm.
Reservoir Dogs because it's just a bunch of manuscripts fighting in the dog ring to get to the top for the
Hmm.
producer to look at. So that name stuck with him, and he said, "Yeah, a bunch of people scrapping it out, and that's the film he made."
Yeah, I mean, Hollywood's obviously so competitive. You can imagine how many great scripts have never been made, right?
Mhm.
So many good writers who just never got their opportunity. And yeah, I mean, that's a cool background on the title of his first movie, which which obviously launched his career, which he's one of the most successful and critically acclaimed directors kind of the last, 30 years or so. When I was watching the movie, one thing I wasn't sure of when before I watched was it's almost not exactly it's not like a bottle episode of TV, but most of the movie takes place over a day or two, and then they do like little flashbacks to make you better understand the characters. So it wasn't like a story that was told over, a long period of time. And the other thing I noticed too was like that first scene, which was a really good scene when they're all having breakfast, I think, at the diner or whatever. And, you saw them arguing, and I couldn't really tell if they had like, known each other for a long time or had great camaraderie or not. But one of my other takeaways was I thought Steve Buscemi was great in that movie.
He was one of my favorites in Mr. Pink. Yeah, he was. You can see the distinct personalities. That's what I think the whole diner scene was to show. It was just a bunch of guys just shooting the shit, and that is, I think it's just a staple in Tarantino dialogue. You see that in like Pulp Fiction, with Samuel Jackson and John Travolta.
Definitely, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Most of the time, Hollywood, yeah, it's like a hanging out with the characters. So what I find cool is that's how you get to know who they actually are. And that was one thing I loved. You mentioned bottle episode, or it's kind of like that. And I found that was also because of the budgeting reason as well, because it costs like it was like 1.2 million to make.
Wow.
And it was a super low budget film.
Yeah. So. And there was obviously some good actors in that movie. Now you'd have to say some of them probably were kind of on the upswing, where they weren't commanding as much like salary to make a movie, but still, I mean, to have that good of a cast and have the movie only cost 1.4 million. I mean, obviously there wasn't a lot of budget for anything else, which makes sense now that you say it, because obviously a lot of the movie kind of takes place at only a couple settings, right? Like it's not like a very extensive like cinematography, like all sorts of different, backgrounds in that. A lot of it takes place at that kind of warehouse, that they were kind of running their operation out of. But what would you say like makes it your favorite Tarantino movie that differentiates itself maybe from the others?
I'd say what makes it my favorite is that very thing where it's like more the bottle, where it's not just that aspect. It's because it's a character driven film. It's not you're like unraveling the plot as it goes on with that like non-linear storytelling. But it's just because it's like the lack of locations and like bigger action, all that stuff, it's really comes down to character. And that's what I really enjoy. It's just like you just see like Mr. Orange and Mr. White, like them growing like a bond over the film. And it was just like, lack of better term, just like raw emotion in my sense. And that's what I really liked about it.
Speaking of that kind of relationship, I was interested at the end between those two, where Mr. Orange was like dying out, obviously like bleeding. Spoiler alert to anyone who hasn't seen these movies. We will be spoiling them obviously today, but yeah, like he's obviously bleeding out, and then Mr. White kind of like gets behind him and lifts his head up and then like holds his gun, right? Like against his face. So I guess was that kind of to show that Mr. Orange was like innocent, kind of like when the cops came, that he wasn't part of the operation? Like what did you think about that ending?
They knew he was undercover, like the cops, so they knew he was. So obviously, but
do you think Mr. White knew by that time or no?
I don't think Mr. White didn't know, because he whispered to him at the end and said, I'm a cop. He's like, I have to tell you, because he was like dying out. He wanted to fully be transparent with Mr. White because of that like bond they grew. Because he's like, they grew to trust each other, and they've been through a lot for the entire film. And then when he whispered to him, like, I'm a cop, Mr. White was he broke down. He's like, how dare you? But kind of, you can see it in his eyes, and he's whining, like he's like crying almost. And I purposely liked how they kept it ambiguous. And that's another thing I want to talk about Tarantino, is like him building suspicion, which he's a master at it. But in this ending, it was you don't know whether or not he shot Mr. Orange, right? Because like the camera was just a close up on his face, and I personally think he did shoot Mr. Orange, because you hear a gunshot before the second gunshot, you see him fall over, Harvey Keitel, right, Mr. White. So I personally think he shot him. Also, if you really pay attention to the sound, I had to turn it up. you hear when Mr. Pink leaves with the diamonds, you hear the cops yelling at him
Yeah.
outside, and then you hear a gunfire. So I think Mr.
Mhm.
Pink died too. That was my
Yeah.
take.
It was funny because as I was watching the end and you see like it was like a standoff, obviously. It's like The Office, three guys all like
Yeah.
pointing guns at each other.
Yeah.
And then they end up all shooting each other. And then you just see Mr. Pink like kind of just look around, grab the briefcase with the diamonds and walk out.
Yeah.
And I thought that would have been awesome if he could have just got away,
He got away,
with
yeah.
the diamonds. But
And I thought he
obviously
did the whole time until that I lost again.
and well, I was gonna say we don't know for sure if he didn't,
Mhm.
but if there was shooting and the cops came in the warehouse afterwards, he probably died.
Yeah.
So it probably didn't happen, which I guess makes sense because it kind of seemed like they weren't trusting each other. It didn't really make sense maybe for it to work out for one of the guys, but still, obviously a very good movie, and it's trademark Tarantino. Like it's the dialogue, I think, that makes his movies. Like if the scripts weren't so good, they would be, I would say, like extremely boring movies. You know what I mean? Just because there's not a lot of like dramatics, at least in the first, like that movie in particular, Reservoir Dogs, right? Like it's really script and character driven.
It's the eccentric dialogue that gets you drawn in, right? And so what were your thoughts on the film then? What did you like about Reservoir Dogs, or if you didn't like it?
I thought it was good. I guess I'm not a huge fan of kind of movies or stories that take place over such short amount of time. That's just my own thing. I don't know. I guess I like kind of a movie that spans over a period of time. Like you can kind of see changes, maybe
like development of
in characters. Yeah, like development of characters and relationships and that. But certainly a very good movie. We'll get to our rankings of the Tarantino movies, but it won't be my highest. But that's not to say it wasn't a very good movie. Like the Tarantino movies I've seen, I like them all, so it's a high bar. But I liked the movie. I thought it was very good. I thought I'd actually like it a bit more. We'll get to Pulp Fiction next, which I liked even more than I thought I would. So just kind of, it's a give and take. But no, I thought it was really good. But yeah, I mean, let's move forward with Pulp Fiction. I guess that was obviously his next movie. After Reservoir Dogs came out, with the budget that it had, Tarantino could make any movie he wanted and have any network or like Universal Studios, whatever, pick it up to like help him out with the funding, obviously, because the first movie was so successful and so well thought of critically that the world was his oyster. He could pretty much do anything he wanted. And I think Pulp Fiction, I don't know if you'd agree with me, is the most Tarantino of all the Tarantino movies. Like it's
definitely,
so
when you think of
Tarantino.
him, it's synonymous with Pulp Fiction. Yeah, like that's his number one Tarantino movie, you could say. And when I first saw it, like I enjoyed it, but I didn't enjoy it as much as I did until like repeat watchings, to be honest. Because what's really cool about the background of this film is there's a little like description at the start of the film. I like a little text on the page. I forget what it specifically reads, but it's about like the definition of what Pulp Fiction is. Yeah, so you've seen it recently. Do you remember what it says? Or
I don't remember like exactly what it said, but I think it had something to do with like magazines and kind of like tabloid media coverage. Maybe I can look it up.
And that's perfect, because that's what I was the exact thing I can't remember, but it was supposed to be the film Pulp Fiction was supposed to be the serialized magazines of those old stories back in the day, like dime novels, right? Back in the I'm trying to decade the 50s and 60s, even before then, actually, like way before then. You get that where they're like isolated little stories, right? And that's what this film is. They're isolated different plots that threaten to intertwine. They intertwine slightly, right? So
yeah, and I was way off with what I thought it was about because, well, according to this Wikipedia, but it says the title refers to the pulp magazines and hard-boiled crime novels popular during the mid-20th century. So yeah, like 1950s, 60s, known for their graphic violence and punchy dialogue, which, I mean, that's kind of exactly what the movie is, like crazy, violent, and like the dialogue is, aggressive and kind of like, almost every scene there's a line where you're just like, what? Like, like you're not used to hearing that in movies, especially like a like it's not just out there to shock you, it's like it actually kind of works within the story, right?
Yeah.
But for sure, I mean, Pulp Fiction, probably the most iconic Tarantino movie, a lot of people would say. And I think for me, I enjoyed it even more than I thought, even though it's definitely an unconventional way of storytelling, because it's kind of broken up in different parts and you have different storylines that you realize like are interwoven, as it goes along, including the first scene. Like as I got towards the end, kind of towards the end of the movie, I was like, they must be coming back to that first scene, or else what was the point, right? And then of course it does. So it was very kind of satisfying the way it went along. And I would say my biggest takeaway was just the dynamic and relationship between Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson was just incredible. Like that's what made the movie to me. Like that was the best part of the movie.
It was your favorite storyline, right? That was your favorite,
like just one of my favorite, like just it's exactly as you said before. It's like just you're just hanging out with the characters and they were just like clever and witty and eccentric, like they each had a very distinct kind of personality and view of the world. So I really enjoyed that for sure.
Yeah, I'm thinking like my favorite storyline, I'm trying to think. I did like Samuel Jackson and Travolta. That was probably one of my favorites. I don't, because there's that storyline. Then there's Bruce Willis, the boxer. Then you got Tim Roth and Bunny. I think his girlfriend's name was.
Yeah, that's what he'd call her anyway.
What am I missing here? I think that's
it.
That's pretty much it. Yeah.
Well, and then there's like some little things that connect like the different stories, right? Like there's the guy who like wants Butch to throw the fight, who's also uses Samuel L. Jackson and Travolta as like hitmen kind of thing, right? So that kind of weaves the story together. And that was so funny. The scene where Butch goes back to his apartment to get his dad's watch.
Yeah, and then
he finds Travolta, and like we can get back to that, but like that scene with Christopher Walken as like I don't know what position he was, the Marines or whatever, like talking to the kid, like that's so like ridiculous, like how long it was and how good it was, like his whole monologue, and for it to like basically make no sense at the time, right? But then as the story unfolds with Butch, you kind of understand, like that's just like it's so creative and such good writing,
talking
like
about having a watch up his ass the whole time.
Yeah, I know. That's what I noticed too. He's like, your father had this watch up his ass for 5 years, and I had it up mine for 3 or something. Something like it's so good.
5 long years he wore this watch up his ass. Then he died of dysentery. Give me the watch. I hid this uncomfortable hunk of metal up my ass 2 years.
And then obviously, yeah, so Butch goes back to find it. Butch, man, he flipped out on his girlfriend a couple times. God, I always thought she was going to leave. Man, he had a dark side. But yeah, so he goes back to his apartment, obviously, and looks like it's empty. And then he's making like Pop-Tarts. He looks on the counter and he sees this like, I don't even know what type of gun it was. Some sort of like machine gun with a muzzle on it.
It was an Uzi with a suppressor. Yeah,
with a suppressor on it. He picks it up, and then John Travolta flushes the toilet, comes out of the bathroom, and just like they look at each other like, and then obviously he kills him.
I think that's awesome because it's like a nice like a joke and a play on the like the ultra violent like gunfight kind of thing. He just picks it up. He's like, oh, and then it's like that's pretty realistic, right? I'm just gonna see that gun. Okay, someone's broken my house. I'll use it on you, right? It's like
I also thought it was like a little bit of a maybe a metaphor. I don't know if it's a metaphor, but it just kind of was like, because at that point Samuel L. Jackson had kind of quit, right? Like quit kind of that lifestyle, I believe, because obviously Travolta died. So at that point, like that's part of the movie, is like it's not told in order, right? You kind of have to
Mhm.
really follow along to understand. But I think it was kind of like they needed each other, like Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson, and the fact that he was on his own led him to making a mistake like that, kind of like getting
Yeah,
sloppy and not having backup, right?
yeah,
But
exactly. That's a big one too. And I found that cool. Like you mentioned the well, we were talking about it earlier, but the Uma Thurman scene of dance scene, right?
yeah,
Like
well,
that.
yeah, they had a couple iconic scenes right in that movie, and
Mhm.
that's definitely one of them.
But what's cool about that is it's iconic, yes, but Tarantino, it's like almost a shot for shot, like an homage to a movie called 8.5 by 11. Sorry, 8.5. It was a movie in the 30s, I believe,
Hmm.
40s maybe, where they have like a wide angle shot, like almost like a extreme wide angle shot of them doing the same dance moves. It's the exact same like shuffle and like going forward and back. And then there's another one in the 60s movie. I can't remember the name, but he said he was inspired by that. But it's like a certain dance that's been like emulated again and again. And so
Mhm.
it just shows his love for old cinema, which is cool.
Yeah, for sure. He definitely loves movies. Maybe not Marvel movies, but we can get to that. But he
Mhm.
certainly loves film, and you can tell, in his movies, like he definitely takes a lot of inspiration from older films and ones he enjoyed. So I guess if we want to just touch on the next few, I haven't seen these, so maybe we
Mhm.
won't go as long just because you don't really have someone to bounce things off, but you can just kind of give us your thoughts on these movies.
Well,
Uh,
I'm gonna be completely honest. I did not see Jackie Brown, and
ah,
I was that was the one I know that was the one I was supposed to watch. I was too busy
that's all
doing some
right.
own writing.
That's fine.
So everybody who's watching, we apologize. We
Yeah.
don't have any Jackie Brown information today, so I'm gonna watch it.
Yeah.
That's on me. But
Well, that's the homework then for the
it's the homework
listeners
exactly.
and
And you
the
guys,
viewers. You have to watch Jackie Brown.
and comment what
Tell
you
us
think.
what you think. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So we'll
Yeah.
go over the next few.
Mhm.
We'll get your thoughts because I haven't seen them,
Mhm.
but okay. The next two are definitely um, considered, like a lot of people enjoy these two by
Mhm.
Tarantino. Kill Bill, Volume One and Volume Two. It's interesting because this is the only movie that has two of them, right? Like it
Mhm.
has a sequel that Tarantino made. So maybe if you want to touch on Kill Bill Volume One to start, what are your
Mhm.
thoughts or in
Uh,
general about the movies?
yeah, I enjoyed it. I've only seen Kill Bill 1 and Volume 1 and 2 once through. Like it's one I wanted to revisit,
Mhm.
especially going through my whole like film education and learning more and more about this. But again, the one big thing to get out of the way is the yellow outfit that Uma Thurman was wearing. It's the direct homage, like we are saying, to Bruce Lee back in his era, right? Because that's the
Mhm.
outfit he wore. And what's cool is it draws upon a lot of those action films too, and that's why she had that outfit where there was really again the wide angle shots of the huge fight scenes, like especially the one obviously famous one of her taking on the 100 of warriors with swords. So it's a
Mhm.
huge fight scene and Tarantino gore
Yeah.
galore, every just super violent. It's
Mhm.
fun, and that's what he says. He's like, violence is fun. So
And I don't remember if it's Kill Bill or Jackie Brown, but there's one scene everyone knows that Quentin Tarantino is a certified foot guy.
mm,
That is 100%.
that's in
And
most of his movies, actually.
yes, almost every movie has some sort of shot of a woman and her feet. But
Mhm.
I think is it Kill Bill or Jackie Brown where he's like literally, isn't he like sucking on her toes or something?
Oh no,
Isn't that one of the scenes?
um there's uh there's actually a movie he was in. It wasn't his own. Uh,
Okay.
hold on, where he actually played a character. Called From Dusk Till Dawn, and it was
Okay.
in 1996. He acted in it, and he actually
Yes.
played a character where the character had a foot fetish. So
Yeah.
there was very prolonged shots of him staring at feet and like cutting to him, like licking his lips and stuff. And what's weird is you see this in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. You
Mhm.
see bare feet in
Even Pulp
Inglorious
Fiction.
Bastards, Pulp Fiction, with Uma Thurman taking her shoes off to do that stuff. You just get
Yeah.
like uncomfortably long shots of feet, and
Yeah.
that's
Maybe it was Jackie Brown because I thought there was a scene of him like it was bizarre, but we don't we don't have to linger too much on
Yeah.
that.
It
But
just yeah. And then one more thing about the foot thing. It was funny because
yeah.
Brad Pitt called him out at one of the award shows
Oh
where he
yeah.
was making a joke being like, he's like, Tarantino has removed more women from their shoes than the TSA. And I was just like, I was like, it's, and then everyone knows, right? It's,
Yeah.
but anyway, sorry.
But
Kill
no,
Bill.
no, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, and I mean, if you're not like super, versed on Kill Bill, like we don't have to talk about it too much.
Hmm.
But
I'll just touch on like one last thing is
sure.
it's like the Hong Kong wire work that you see reminiscent in the 50s and 60s in Hong Kong, like
Mhm.
for the action sequences. And it's like a revenge hero's story kind of thing. Oh, like more of a revenge story of Uma Thurman taking justice on Bill. Like she's trying to kill Bill.
Mhm.
And so if you haven't seen it, Mitch, like I recommend it's a good one. It's fun.
Yeah.
One of his more violent ones.
And then Kill Bill Volume 2, is it kind of similar or a completely different kind of story?
Oh, it's yeah, so Tarantino doesn't do sequel movies. Like he just does individual stories. And that's what I love. It's
Mhm.
like it's kind of this old cinema. There's no sequels, right? It's none of this, we're gonna continue a story for profit or money, right? So
Mhm.
volume two is just a continuation of the story. Like it's not, they're not
Okay.
individual first and second one. That's why it's called volume one and two, because it continues the story.
So I guess you just kind of made like a super long movie, broke it up into two, and kind of gave it to the studio or whatever.
Yeah.
So the next one, Death Proof. Have you seen that one?
I've not seen it. It's not one of his ones he's directed, I think.
Okay, so that's why we're only looking at the ones he's written and directed, kind of the typical like Tarantino,
Or could
what you
you
would
stand,
consider a true Tarantino movie.
actually
Um,
I stand corrected. He did direct this one.
well, then
But
you
it's
are full of it. You
I'm
are
full of
full of
it,
it.
and that's why I stand corrected. Everybody, I was wrong. I have my own homework to do. So it's
Yeah.
just the movies I have seen of Tarantino, I've
Mhm.
seen most of them multiple times. And so
Yeah,
it's my
that's no
fault that
problem.
I'm branched out to see other ones.
It's okay. In the next ones, I've seen a couple of them, so we can
Mm.
definitely have a good conversation. One of one infamous one for Tarantino, for a variety of reasons, is probably his most controversial, is Django Unchained,
Mhm.
which is like a Western movie. I haven't seen the movie. I I don't, would I watch it? Sure. But it's also been kind of a long time, and
Mhm.
it's like a Western kind of where, well, you should go into it more, but obviously it stars Jamie Foxx, Leo DiCaprio, Christoph Waltz. And that was
Mhm.
one thing we wanted to kind of touch on was Tarantino. It seems like once he kind of works with an actor, if he likes the actor's performance and probably like their style of work, um, he's loyal and has them in other films as well.
Mhm. And
So
that's
like
yeah.
so yeah, like Christoph Waltz was in Django, and then he was in the next movie that we'll talk about,
Mhm.
Inglorious Bastards.
Yeah, I just, and like you were saying, he's the same actors. I love the idea of that because he kind of, when he makes these movies, it's like alternative history fiction because he talks
Mhm.
about things like, especially with Inglorious Bastards, I'll get into more of that. But that's why he uses different characters. It's just the solid character piece of a film. You don't get sequels, you don't get like intertwined universes like you do nowadays.
Mhm.
It's and we can talk about his thoughts on, you know, his superhero movies and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's just an isolated spaghetti western movie. And Jamie Foxx, it's funny, he did struggle at the beginning of the filming for Django because he came off with the attitude of yeah, I'm Django, like I'm the gunslinging Western hero. And then it's funny because after the first take or like first day, Tarantino pulled him aside and he took him to a trailer and he's like, what was that? And then he's like, I'm Django. He's like, no, you're a slave. You're a fucking slave. And he's saying that. I don't know if you can swear on here, but
I
um,
think we can.
you can't. Okay, he's a fucking slave. And then so he's just saying this as a joke to Jamie Foxx, saying like you have to act like a slave first, and then you build to become Django. So he came off at the start just all like suave, and then he's like, okay, this is, you got to build yourself up as a character. So I just thought that was funny.
Mhm.
I've seen it in interviews.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah.
I mean, yeah, and I guess, it was fairly critically acclaimed. And obviously there was controversy, like, it's kind of a unique story, obviously, as it's a Western, but it's like a slave. I don't know if he escaped or was freed or whatever, and then, kind of exacts revenge, right?
Well,
Um,
yeah, I can give you a little like start.
sure.
It's synopsis. So Django is he's a slave, and he's literally chained by the hands and the feet. He's walking in the forest, throughout the plains and stuff, and he's being guided by a slave owner. Christoph Waltz comes in, and he was looking for Django because he found out I think he was like he knew about his like skills as a gunslinger kind of thing.
Hmm.
He frees him, uh, and then Christoph Waltz is a bounty hunter. He's a German bounty hunter, and so he's collecting bounties, and he's helping Django become a better, like more efficient, like gunslinger.
Hmm.
And then he finds out the whole movie is basically him acquiring the skills, and he's trying to save his wife, who's in slavery, who Leonardo DiCaprio has enslaved.
Hmm.
And so he becomes a free man, as a partner of Christoph Waltz, and then he's trying to he's trying to free his wife. That's the movie,
Hmm. Yeah.
and it's again very good movie. I recommend it. So
Yeah. And there's another actor who, again, is in several of Tarantino's movies, which is Samuel L. Jackson, right? He's in that movie as well.
Yep.
So yeah, and I mean, the controversy around it's pretty obvious. Like, it's Tarantino, obviously a white guy, writing a story that has like a lot of, the N-word, which, I mean, obviously in that time period would have been common, but also I guess it's kind of like, does he need to be the one telling this story, sort of thing, but also, a lot of people like it. So I just thought it was good to bring it up. I think at least that there was obviously controversy around the film at the time, for sure.
Yeah, like I don't think him, like he should be limited to not do that movie, like because he did a very good job entertaining film. But Leonardo DiCaprio had a tough time with it because he was disgusted by using the N-word and like just saying it outright, like in the disgusting manner as the slave owner, that they said he was talking to Samuel Jackson and Jamie Foxx and saying like they're like the two actors said, "Hey, like, dude, you're commit to the role, like you're doing this." Then the next day, he was fully that character, and they were saying like, yeah, he was scary because he was doing that film. But also, do you know? So you said you haven't seen it, right?
No.
Have you heard about him cutting his hand during the film?
Yes, and then he just like kept going,
Yeah, so
even after, right?
he slammed his hand on the table and cut his hand open. And then he not only did he just continue the scene, he used the blood in his hand in the scene. He was insulting Django's wife at the table there, and then he's like, "Look at her!" And then he takes his hand and smears the blood across her face.
Wow.
And it was just in the moment he did it, and Tarantino loved it and kept it in. But she was like, "You see the pure shock." Everyone, like, when everyone was like scared like that, looking at him, it's because it was unscripted, and he used it in the scene. Brilliant by Leo. It was just amazing. Like,
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of what you hope for when you're making a movie with amazing, actors and actresses, is that they'll be able to, because obviously the script is the most important thing, but the actors are the ones who bring it to life, and then the really great ones can even take it to another level with improvisation and just kind of taking opportunities when they see it, right, with the script. So then the next one, Tarantino kind of went back to back sort of Western movies a little bit, right? Would you say Hateful Eight's a bit of a Western, or not really?
Oh, Hateful Eight's a Western. I see it
Yeah.
as a mix between the spaghetti Western and Reservoir Dogs. It's like almost Django Unchained Reservoir Dogs because it is an isolated location in the cabin in the middle of nowhere in the winter during post Civil War, I think. Yeah, it was like a couple years after Civil War.
Okay.
So have you seen the film?
I have not.
You seen it? Again, that one I'd say put that one first, and then I'd say Inglorious Bastards because I still.
Oh, I've seen Inglorious
You've
Bastards.
seen okay, perfect. Because like.
Oh, wait. I skipped Inglorious Bastards. Oh my, what a mistake.
Oh.
All right, we will get to the Hateful Eight. Instead, we must go to Inglorious Bastards, which is, I would say, I'm not saying it's considered his best, but I would say it's the most unanimously liked by the general public of his movies, where there's not a lot of people who are like, I didn't really like it. Whereas his movies are very unique. Like Pulp Fiction is a very unique movie. I can understand how a decent amount of people would not understand or just not like the movie, you know, and the way it's written. Obviously, that's cool, like for people who do enjoy it. But I think Inglorious Bastards was kind of a bit more conventional of storytelling, a bit more still great and still unique, but more conventional than some of his other work. Plus, just like a very satisfying movie, kind of like in a lot of ways. Like obviously, it's that fiction, right? It's like it's
Alternative history kind of thing,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
where obviously there's the band of Jewish American soldiers just going around, you know, collecting Nazi scalps and that,
Yeah.
led by Italian Brad Pitt, which was
Gorlami.
funny. Yeah, that's such a funny, like you see it on the Instagram or something, a video, and it's just
Yeah.
like the clip of like, all right, guys, I speak the most Italian of any of us, so I'm gonna go to the whatever it was, the
It was like
theater or
the
something.
premiere in theater.
Yeah,
And I think
and
that's
then
one
they
of his
just cut
favorite
to him
scenes.
and he's like, Gorlami.
And he's like, one more time, because you know
Yeah.
he's messing with him. He knows those are Inglorious Bastards. He's just messing
Yeah.
with him the whole time.
Gorlomi? Lo pronuncio correctamente? Sì, corretto.
And then he's like, what about you, sir? He's like, Dominic Tococo.
Yeah.
Dominic Tococo. And then he's like, one more time for me, please. Like I one of my favorite scenes in the movie, but there's two that really stands out for me, and it shows Tarantino. Like I was thinking about this earlier. He is a master of suspense and not surprise. Like I think, and he likes that, because if you have like a surprise, it's more like a twist, like, oh, what happened? Whereas like suspense that's when you're on the edge of your seat, and I think that's more effective. So the opening scene is one of my favorites in all
Yeah.
of cinema.
Yeah.
Where Christoph Waltz, beautiful performance. He
Mhm.
again, he was like hunting. He was like called the Jew Hunter, right?
Yeah.
So he was when he's explaining like how, you know, you have to think like a Jew and to find them, and then the camera just pans down to the floorboards of them underneath it.
Yeah.
That's just this. I think is beautiful suspension, because like the audience knows, the French farmer knows, but not Christoph Waltz, and that's just, I think that was just the most like edge of my
Yeah.
seat one, as well as the bar scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even like when I can't remember if it was grade 11 or grade 12 English, but doesn't really matter. But and we were like working on trying to build suspense in writing, and our teacher had us watch that opening scene like on YouTube of Inglorious Bastards. And even if like I think if you haven't watched Inglorious Bastards, I would say if there's any movie, you know, someone should watch of Tarantino, just having no idea what kind of films they like, I would say you'll like Inglorious Bastards, you know, like it's just like so good. And like a lot of it is actually quite satisfying, even though it's like obviously that time and the era that the movie's made about was horrible, but it's made in a more positive light, because that's what Tarantino kind of likes to do. We'll get to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where he kind of takes horrible stories and almost makes the victims seem like heroes, right? Like that's what the Inglorious Bastards were, kind of, right? Like the American Jewish group. But yeah, and then obviously like the bar scene with the number 3, right? Like that's iconic. But yeah, just a great movie.
Yeah, and that was Michael Fassbender as the English spy. Oh, it's just amazing performance. So yeah, I'd say that has to be, when we rank it, it's up there for me for sure.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it in a while, but I have watched the first intro scene many times recently.
Yeah, and even if like you're someone who doesn't really want to watch the movie, it's too long, or you're just not really interested, whatever, watch the opening scene. Especially if you're interested in writing or filmmaking, just like how they're able to build suspense, for sure.
Everybody watch it.
Yeah.
It's you have to. I'm sorry. It's amazing.
And Christoph Waltz, I mean, what an actor. Like the way he plays that role. I remember reading something how Tarantino wasn't sure if like he was even going to make the movie or if he was going to include that character, because he couldn't he didn't think anyone would be able to kind of just to get the essence of what the character was supposed to be. And then he had Christoph Waltz audition and was just like, oh my God, right? Like
he had delayed production for a bit, I think, because he needed to find his Hans, right?
Well, and it's such a difficult character to play, because the character, you're like scared of him, but he's also like extremely charismatic, right? And smooth. Just very like it's kind of like a it's like very dualistic in terms of, depending what scene he's in, but also
It's
just,
uncanny actually. Yeah,
yeah,
he's like on the surface, he's like this super like charming, nice guy, but there's like that all that malice and like evil underneath, right? So
for sure. So yeah, I mean, definitely should check out the movie, or at the very least, the opening scene for sure. But now we'll move on to Hateful Eight, which is that Western with, again, Samuel L. Jackson
yep.
and Christoph Waltz, right? Is he in this one or no?
Uh,
No, he was in Django.
no,
He
he's
was
in
in
Django.
Django.
This one you had Tim Roth playing an Englishman in this one.
Oh, was he in it again?
Yeah, so he dressed almost similarly to Christoph Waltz in Django Unchained. He had the bowler hat, he had the nice suit, but he was Tim Roth playing English guy, and then
Mhm.
you had Channing Tatum of all people show up in the movie.
Really? I
Channing
didn't know he
Tatum
was in it.
played a gunman that was part of the band of I think like the thieves that were
Mhm.
like supposed to be waiting in town, but they were there. Sorry, spoiler alert, everybody. Um, he wasn't supposed to pop up till later. But yeah, it's uh very um Reservoir Dog type film in the sense of mistrusting in front of everybody. So a little synopsis is there's people coming to this cabin, this inn, and there's people from all over coming here to stay like through the night because it's like a huge storm, like a blizzard. So they're staying in the cabin, and you get a retired Civil War vet from the Confederacy who's there. You get Samuel Jackson, um, who allegedly has like a letter from Lincoln, and he's like been like um, tasked to carry out something from Lincoln.
Mhm.
Uh, you have Kurt Russell. He's a bounty hunter taking back one of the leaders of the band of rebels, or the sorry, rebels, the thieves.
Mhm.
And I forget the actress's name. She was in just look that up right now.
I'll look it up. You can keep talking.
Yeah. And she was a criminal he was trying to take for the bounty. And so you get this a bunch of characters who are, and there's a few more I'm trying to remember, but that's
Is it
essentially the
is
film.
it a bit like bottle episode-ish, or is it
Oh, very
different?
much so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it all takes place, I'd argue, uh, yeah, and then it flashes to like their backgrounds when they're telling stories and stuff, but it all takes place in the one cabin.
Mhm.
Uh,
So the actress's name is Jennifer Jason Lee, or
that's it.
Leigh.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
she did an amazing performance, and so that film, the one thing I remember from it is the big the big upset of Kurt Russell breaking a guitar. Did you hear about this one?
No.
So they try to make it all authentic, the whole scene from like the late 1860s, early 1870s, I think. So they had
Mhm.
an actual antique, like an old wooden guitar from acoustic guitar from that era. And Kurt
Mhm.
Russell, like you had the Jennifer Lee,
I
right?
think so. Something hyphenated, but yeah.
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 She picked up the guitar and started playing. And then Kurt Russell was like just pissed at her the whole movie because he's trying to like stay quiet, like you're my bounty. He takes the guitar from her and smashes it. And then you see her go, she breaks character and is like, whoa, 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 and then looks off screen to Tarantino. She looks at him
Hmm.
and they keep the cameras rolling and she just snaps back into it. And she's still in like, right back in character. And they found out he thought it was just a prop. And no, he broke like 120-year-old antique.
Wow.
And it was supposed
That's
to go in the
great.
museum, I think. It's from the museum. It's
Well, that
hilarious.
would have been worth a lot of money, I'm sure, if it was
Oh yeah.
that old. But yeah, it's cool they kept it in the scene. But yeah, I mean, that was a great recap. I feel like Hateful Eight maybe probably not one of the higher profile Tarantino movies, but definitely you enjoyed the film, obviously.
Yeah, it wasn't the highest profile, but when he comes out with just a few amount of movies, everyone flocks to them, right? But
Hmm.
yeah, it's not up there for too many people. That's it.
Yeah. Like I would say for Tarantino, Pulp Fiction, synonymous.
Mm.
Um, Inglorious Bastards, Django, probably some of his most kind of popular, just in regular media, not like film bros or like film people.
Yeah.
But and then his last movie, his most recent movie, and now he said he'd only do 10 movies, right? Something
Yeah.
like that.
So he said he'd
So
do
does that mean
10
he's?
movies.
I feel like he's not going to do that. If you have that kind of brain and that kind of passion for something, especially when it's not like, now, don't get me wrong, making a film is extremely difficult, obviously, but it's not like being a football player where your body just can't, you know what I mean? Like you just can't,
Yeah.
like can't do the work anymore. Like you can still make films, maybe you have to delegate more or whatever. If you're a creative person like that, it's like musicians like will make music till they die because that's your life, you know.
Yeah, it's what they
So
want to do. They love doing it.
I doubt he'll stop at any sort of number. You know, I'm sure once he has a story he really wants to tell, you know, he'll do it. And actually on Two Bears One Cave, which is a podcast, Tom Segura and Bert
Oh,
Kreischer,
yeah.
they had Quentin on filling in for Bert one episode, and Quentin actually said he was writing a mini series. It was like
Mm.
8 or 10 episodes, and that he had it already written. So, I mean, unless he didn't want it made, it'll get made, obviously, by someone. So that could be interesting because I am a big fan, and I'm sure we'll get to that in future episodes, some different TV series. Like that's probably part of why I haven't seen as many movies as I have, is I'm just a bit more of a TV fan. Not, and by TV I mean more like serious kind of shows, like, you know, like The Wire, Breaking Bad, Sopranos, like that sort of thing. Just because I enjoy seeing stories told over a long period of time, whereas obviously making a movie is much more difficult, and you only have a very short window, right, to deliver kind of a well-rounded story with character in that. And so we'll get to Tarantino's last film, or his most recent film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which was definitely critically acclaimed. It was nominated for several Oscars. Brad Pitt won for Best Supporting Actor. And I believe Tarantino won an Oscar as well, if I'm not mistaken, for Best Director, maybe?
I think it was best
Or Best
original
Screenplay?
screenplay. I'm not sure, but
One or the other.
yeah. But I think Parasite might have won that. I think it was the same year.
Oh, definitely won Best Picture, Parasite, for sure.
No, Parasite won 4 Oscars. It's
That was the
ridiculous.
year. It was like Parasite was an 18, what's the one, 1812 or 18, or 1917, 1917.
1917 won best.
Or if 1812.
But it won best. Wow, yeah, it won best original screenplay, best director, well, these are different awards too, but I'm pretty sure the Oscar was Academy Award for writing.
And yeah, I must say, like, obviously Leo was really good in it and it was the main character, but I did think Brad Pitt did kind of steal the show a bit as the supporting actor. Like, I thought that was probably maybe the best thing I've seen him in. Just like so cool. Like, just I don't know. It's like whatever Tarantino envisioned the character when he was writing the script, like Brad Pitt just brought it to life perfectly. And obviously, like, it's a cool story too. It's old Hollywood. And it's like he was a stunt man, obviously, and that would have been quite an interesting lifestyle, right? And probably not one that's been written about or had much, you know, movies or shows about it, because it's a unique subject, right?
Yeah, it's the unsung heroes of Hollywood, the stunt people, and as well as Tarantino was telling Brad Pitt and Leo, he's like, you guys are playing actors that are on the down and out of Hollywood, and they're like, so we'll play ourselves. That was the joke, because they're like, they're obviously past their prime a bit, but they're still amazing actors and they'll still do great things.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So what did you think of the overall film? Because like I know you enjoyed this one a lot, but what specifically like stood out for you? Like what drew you?
I guess for me, I mean, it was really the characters. I just thought like the characters were really good. The acting was so good. I also enjoyed, I kind of like, I'm a bit of a like sucker for kind of old things. Like I love old music and I don't know, I just, not that I'm, you know, don't enjoy new music and new stuff as well, obviously, but I do enjoy kind of being able to almost have like watch a time capsule, right, of what maybe Los Angeles was like during like the 60s and that, right? It was such a different time before technology, and I just thought the vibe Tarantino was able to create on screen was really interesting. And another thing I liked was obviously the whole like Manson dynamic, right? Of you're
Mhm.
seeing these stories of the actors and everything, and Sharon Tate's obviously in it.
Mhm.
Um, and then just looming in the background is Manson, and then obviously one of the scenes is Brad Pitt's character like goes up to the wherever that was where like the Manson family was living,
Yep.
and it was very eerie. And then the ending sold the movie to me.
Mm.
Like I liked the movie, like I thought it was like this was good, like pretty good movie, and then the ending like bumped it up like
Yeah.
a big amount because it was such a satisfying ending because it's
Mhm.
obviously like extremely sad story. Like if people don't know, Sharon Tate was a like a very famous actress, movie star,
Mhm.
and she was actually pregnant, and then one of like two or whatever people from the Manson family, Charles Manson's cult, killed her,
I
and
didn't know she was
so
pregnant. Yeah.
yeah, so she died, and obviously like her baby died as well. So extremely sad. And then
Mhm.
to have like him do his classic, um, his like revisionist history kind of with the
Mhm.
ending of the movie where Brad Pitt and Leo's character end up killing the Manson family people,
Yeah.
and that flamethrower came back, which was funny, and the dog, right, where you'd see when he was at his place and he'd go like or whatever, like with
Yeah.
his
He was a
mouth, and the
very
dog would then
trained
eat,
Rottweiler. Yeah.
like super trained dog. And so then he's like, it seems like he's in dire straits, and then he just goes like or whatever, and the dog like goes crazy on the
Yeah,
people.
it's like
So
sick and boy, and he just ran and
yeah.
yeah.
And then obviously it ends with like them going to Sharon Tate's house for a drink. So I thought, that was like a very satisfying ending and definitely pushed it over the top for me, going from like pretty good to good movie to like that was a really, really, really good movie.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that because a lot of people were saying through the whole movie, they're like, "Where's this Tarantino violence? Where is it?" And then we're like,
Mm-hmm.
"There it is," and then
Yeah.
like near the end, right? So this one, when it first came out, it was it was on the back burner for me for in terms of his other movies because it
Mm-hmm.
felt like it was a hangout with the characters, and it was cool to see because I love old cinema too. To see
Mm-hmm.
Bruce Lee, like the actor doing that, and throwing him into a car, then mentioning about Brad Pitt's character killing his wife, the little like scene where it cuts to them like on a boat, and then he's just holding like a fishing harpoon or something, and then she's just like complaining to him the whole time. And you see him just like stare her down. It's just it, it was a very cool story, but it for me at the start it lacked a little more substance for me
Mm-hmm.
at the start. So I gotta view it again, but
No,
it was
that's
more
that's totally
so
fair.
yeah, it was
That's
more
totally
so
fair.
hang out with the characters for me. And
I
that
would say it's like in terms of kind of like bursts, if you will, just like as you're watching a movie and you get these like big moments kind of, it's probably the least of any of his movies, at least any of the movies I've seen.
yeah.
It's definitely the most like kind of chilled out movie he has where like there's not a lot of crazy action, or like the story isn't very dramatic really. Like it seemed pretty realistic,
Mhm.
to the times until the end, of course, when you get the
Oh yeah.
classic Tarantino violence. But yeah, I definitely think you should check it out again, but I understand where you're coming from. Um, and now I
Mhm.
guess it's the perfect time to get to our rankings. So I'll go first because I've only seen four movies, and I'm not the film major. So
Yeah.
I'll let Alex go second. Oh, one last thing before we get to that I wanted to mention was, so Pulp Fiction, probably Tarantino's most iconic movie, or at least the most Tarantino movie of them all, in my
Yeah.
opinion. Um, Came out in 1994, which might be the best movie year of all time, or at least like in the last 40 years or whatever, 30, 40
Mhm.
years. Because in 1994, you had Pulp Fiction,
Mhm.
Forrest Gump. That's enough. Like, that's two just
That's yeah.
massive, iconic movies. Um, and then throw in Shawshank Redemption, which might be like the most commonly answered the most common answer to the question, what is your favorite movie?
Mhm.
I'm not saying it's the best movie of all time. I'm just saying anecdotally, the people I've spoken to, that's the most common answer I get
And I know that's one
for
of your
what's your favorite
favorites
movie of all
too.
time. It's definitely one of it's
Yeah.
probably my favorite, but it's
Mhm.
certainly one of them. Um,
Also
so I
another
mean
one,
all three of those movies, like come on, like those are three
yeah,
just classics.
and
Like
Leon the Professional. I don't know if you've heard that one.
Was that also 1994?
That was 94 with
Mhm.
Natalie Portman, and she was like 12 years old at the time, and she was being like trained as like a hitman
Oh,
after her
okay.
family was killed. That's one I recommend checking out. But you're right, 94 was a great year for movies. It was.
I mean, all three of those. And that's another thing. This is just kind of a film in general kind of comment that I have, but we don't have to get too deep into it. But it's like, so those movies were all nominated for Best Picture, right?
Mhm.
They also like, they were not massive movie theater hits, but I would say like a decent amount of people saw those movies. I think now, because of the way studios work, where it's basically you're a superhero movie or you're a low budget indie movie, and there's nothing in between.
There's no in between anymore.
So
And
now you have like the movies nominated for Oscars. A lot of people, unless you're like really dedicated to wanting to be prepared for the Oscars or you're a huge film fan, has not seen the movies that are nominated for like Best Picture, right? A lot of the time.
yeah,
So
and
that was just my own little anecdote I wanted to throw in. But also in 1994, so you had those three giants. You also had three iconic comedies, all starring the same actor. Can you name the actor, or do you already know who it is?
I know who it is because
All
you
right,
mentioned
well,
before, but you
for
say it.
yeah, well, for those at home, think of who it is. Jim Carrey, the Canadian legend.
Mhm.
The best year of comedy movies ever, like in terms of commercially and also just kind of beloved movies. You have Ace Ventura, which I've actually never seen. I've never seen
Mm.
that movie. The Mask, I've seen that. Have you seen The Mask?
I've seen The Mask a while ago. It
Yeah.
was I got to rewatch that.
Yeah. I mean, it would probably be so weird now, but it was good when I was a kid or when I was younger, at least. And then just a all-time classic, ultimate road trip, buddy, like idiot movie, Dumb and Dumber. I mean,
Oh yeah, yeah.
doesn't get much better than that in terms of like just two idiot guys, going across the country. There's just so many lines from that movie. Like every time you watch it, there's something else. Like one of the ones I love is when Lloyd was tired and or I don't know if it was Lloyd or Harry, but one of them
Harry, yeah.
got tired and took the wrong exit. And so instead of going to Colorado, they went to like Nebraska. And so and Lloyd or Harry's like, well, we're in Colorado, Lloyd. And and uh Jim Carrey, Lloyd was like, we're the Rocky Mountains. He's like, that John Denver's full of shit, man. So
Just absolute gem lines in there.
yeah.
I saw one. I don't know. Have you seen, while we're on the topic, have you seen Cable Guy?
Yeah.
That I saw that recently for the first time. That's one of my
It's a
favorite
funny
series.
one.
No,
Well, it's funny because it's also
yeah.
like super creepy. It's like this
Oh
guy's
yeah.
obsessed with him. But we should definitely we'll definitely do an episode later on, like best comedy movies or something like that. Because there's so many to pick from, like even in the 21st century, like The Hangover, Step Brothers, all that. But
Mhm.
that'll be for another topic. So,
Oh,
or
definitely.
for another episode. But so yeah, let's do our rankings. So for me, I think I have it in my notes. I know it off the top of my head though too,
Mhm.
obviously.
Oh,
But
you're prepared. You're prepared.
I am prepared, and you might be a bit surprised. But
Okay.
again, I liked all of them, and because some of them are so good, it was a high bar. So
Mhm.
wherever I rank them doesn't mean they weren't good movies.
All
So
right.
for
Let's
me,
hear
I've seen four movies, and so fourth I have Reservoir Dogs.
it. Mhm.
That was my fourth of the four. Very good movie, no doubt about it. One of the better movies I've seen. Just with the other ones, it's fourth.
Okay.
Third, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Mhm.
That was third. Both of those were close. Those were close.
Mhm.
Then I would say there was a gap for me. And then this was also close, which I was surprised by. I did not think anyone would challenge the movie I have first because I've always thought that. But
Mhm.
Pulp Fiction I had second, and it was
Oh,
close.
okay.
I liked it much more than I thought. I wasn't sure if I'd like it because I knew it was very, kind of quirky and the storytelling was so unconventional, but I really enjoyed it. So I had that second. It was close. And then in first, I have Inglorious Bastards. I just think it's such a like complete movie. It ticks all the boxes, and it's still Tarantino. It's still unique, but I just thought it it was satisfying, and it was also like made you anxious, made you nervous, made, you know, like it kind of worked on your emotions throughout really well, and definitely built suspense throughout the movie. So
Yeah,
that
so
to
your
me was
top
number
one,
one.
Inglorious Bastards.
Yeah, so I had
Yeah.
Inglorious Bastards, number one, and then Pulp Fiction, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and then Reservoir Dogs.
Hmm.
So Alex, you've actually
Cool.
seen 8 movies. Have you seen
I
of
think I've seen 8. So I've seen Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction,
Mhm.
Kill Bill 1 and 2, which just counts as the one movie. Django Unchained, Inglorious Bastards, Hateful Eight, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So I've seen
Okay.
7 of them.
Mhm.
I know
7/8 for the people at home, because Kill Bill 1 and 2.
Yeah, so Kill Bill 1 and 2 counts as one film. But I'd have to say, from what I remember, I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this. Right now, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood at number 7 for me. I'm gonna
I
say
think
that.
that's fine. I
Yeah,
think that's fine.
I say that again. Great movie. It's just not as Tarantino-esque because I loved with his other stuff. So
Sure.
7 is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Then I might have to say, Kill Bill. I may have put Kill Bill at 6.
Okay.
Again, great movie, just different kind of. Watch it again, but different kind of film.
Mhm.
Then I'd have to say The Hateful Eight, coming in at 5.
Mhm.
Django Unchained at 4.
Mhm.
I'd have to say Pulp Fiction at 3.
Yeah.
Inglorious Bastards at 2.
Mhm.
And Reservoir Dogs at 1.
Very good. I mean, you are definitely a Tarantino fan. You
Mhm.
like the OG, the original movie, first movie he ever made.
Yeah, I just think the simplicity of it, I just really enjoy. And yeah, like I had to say what I needed to say on Reservoir Dogs, but yeah,
Mhm.
for a close one for me is Inglorious Bastards and Pulp Fiction.
Yeah,
That is a very
same with
close
me.
one for me. But I have to give Inglorious Bastards the edge. I have to give it for just those 2 scenes alone. I
Mhm.
have to give it the edge. But
It's also just such like a massive movie. Like there's so many stories going on, and they all work. Like they're all good. Whereas Pulp Fiction, like it's all the script. It's like all script and character.
Mhm.
Whereas Inglorious Bastards, there's just more going on,
Yeah.
kind of. But yeah, I mean, I think we hit almost everything. Reviewing all Tarantino's movies and kind of his style and his background and everything. So, all right, we'll leave it there for today. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe and follow us on our social medias.
Yeah, and until next time, keep on watching.
Save it for the podcast.
Save
That's
it.
perfect. What you're
I'll save
talking
that. I'll
about.
save
That is
that. Yeah.
absolutely perfect.